Welcome to MRV Tutorials. So in the last session, what we did was we just started our basic C programming series, right? So today, what we shall do is we just shall look at the continuation of it. So this is going to be the second video of the C programming for beginners series, right? So what we shall do today is we just shall look at the basic building blocks of the C program. So what are all the most important things which is to be known before writing a particular program, right? So this is the basic building blocks which are used to construct the C programs, right? So the agenda for today is we are just going to look at what is a character set, and then moving on with what is an identifier, what is a keyword, and then what is a data type, what is a variable, and what is a constant. So without further ado, we just shall get on to the class today, guys. So the first most important building block, or the most important thing which you want to know before writing a C program, is the C character set, right? So the C character set, what it does is that it just defines the valid character sets that can be used inside a C program. So whenever I'm just saying the valid, which means that all the eligible characters which you could put inside a C program, we just call it as a eligible character set, right? So what are all the things which you could use? The first thing is your alphabets. We just call it as letters. So starting with A to Z and smaller A to Z, so which means your uppercase and also your lowercase. You could use all the alphabets, including both the cases, you could use inside your program. And then similarly, we just know that C program is a case sensitive program. A capital A is different from a small a. So while writing a program, make sure that you are writing the things in a proper case. So the next thing is we can use your digits inside your C program. So digits in the sense, we just shall start with 0 to 9. So not only 0 to 9, you could use the any combination of your digits inside your C program. So which means after 9 you could go for 10, 11. So which means the combination of all the digits which you could use inside the C program, right? So the next thing is your special characters. So you could use the most of the special characters which is supported by any computer programming language. So you could use a comma, you could use a full stop, you could use a colon, semicolon, exclamatory mark, and then you could use a lot other special characters inside your C program, right? So the next thing is your white spaces. So white spaces are nothing but the spaces, whatever the spaces which we are allowing it inside your C program, right? So what are the major spaces which you could give? So the first thing is your space bar, right? So we are having a space bar inside a keyboard, right? So if you just press a space bar, you will be giving a single line space, right? So what happens over there? So what are the other options? So the next thing is your tab space. So tab space, for moving a couple of tabs, you could use your tab space. Then the carriage return. So carriage return is nothing but if you just press enter, you just move on to it, right? So you just call it as a carriage return. You could use your new line, and you could use your form feed. So these are the basic white spaces which you could support inside your C program, right? So whenever we are just saying about the character set, what are all the eligible things which you could use inside your C program? It is being mentioned. So letters, digits, the special characters, and white spaces. So these are the basic things which you could use inside a C program, right? So moving on to the next slide is your identifier, right? So identifier is nothing but it refers to a name of an object. So whenever we just refer, or whenever we just give a name to any of the things inside your C program, we just call it as an identifier. So whenever I just say any of the things, so what are the things which you could give a name to? So the first thing is you could give an variable a name, a constant a name, an enumeration a name, a structure a name. So whatever the thing which you just name it, we just say it as an identifier. So for example, you could also refer to your functions. So whatever the name which you use, you just say it as an identifier, right? So there are certain things which has to be followed for defining an identifier. The identifier has to be in this particular manner. It has to follow a certain rules. There are certain things which has to be followed while giving a name to your identifiers, right? So what are those things? So the first rule is, so the identifier name in C must have digits, letters, and underscore. So you could use letters, digits, and underscores. So no other special characters apart from underscore is allowed inside your identifiers, right? So the next thing is the first character of an identifier must be a letter. So it should always begin with an alphabet. They just say that it should always begin with an alphabet. So which means it should not begin with a number, right? So this is what it is being mentioned over here. So it should always begin with a alphabet, right? So the next thing is no special characters except underscore, and also you could not use your space or comma in between your identifier. So the most common mistakes which we make while giving the names are we just give a space between the couple of characters which we are just going to use, or we just shall use a comma for the separator operator. So likewise you will be giving those things, so you cannot use those things and all, right? So no special characters apart from your underscore is allowed. So for differentiating two different things, what we can do is we just shall use an underscore and we could represent it. And then similarly space and comma are not allowed inside your identifier name, right? So next thing is your keywords. So keywords and reserve words cannot be used inside as an identifier name. So since keywords are nothing but those are predefined words which has a special meaning to it, we cannot use it as a identifier name. So these are the basic things which you have to be clear with writing your or giving a name to your identifiers, right? So it could be a name of anything. So it could be a name of a variable, it could be name of a constant, it could be a name of a function, it could be a name of a structure. So whatever the name which you are just giving to, you should follow the rules which is being defined for giving the name for an identifier, right? So here there are certain examples through which you could go through the valid identifier names, right? So these are the valid identifier names. So you could if you are just using a couple of words, means you could use your underscore to differentiate the value. So here student name, you could differentiate those two words with the help of an underscore. You cannot use a space or you cannot use a comma between them. So these are the valid identifier names which you could use inside a C program, right? So moving on to the next title is your keywords, right? So keywords is a reserved words which has a particular meaning. So which means the program developer itself, so which means the C program developer itself, what they have done is that they just have assigned a specific meaning for the certain words. So if we just see these particular words, it just goes to perform a particular operation. So these are the keywords which are available inside your C. So the total keywords available inside your C is being listed over here. So for example, I'm just saying that if you just look at the statement int, right? So what it does is that it just has a special operation for it. So what is a special operation? So it just refers to an integer. The variable which you are going to declare is going to be an integer, or the value which you are going to return is going to be an integer. So likewise it has a specific meaning for it, right? So similarly, if I'm just going to use a void mean, so which just represents an null data type, right? So we are going to return a null value, or we are going to use a void value which is nothing but a null value inside it. So similarly, if I just go for a for statement, so for statement what it does is that it just intimates the program that you are going to use a looping structure for it. So similarly, if you are just going to declare if means, what it does is that it just looks at that, it just intimates the system that I'm just going to use a conditional statement out of it. So whenever I'm just using the particular keyword, it just has a special meaning, right? And that particular meaning is defined by the program developer itself. So what they have done is that they just have given a specific name or specific meaning for the particular name. So whenever the particular name occurs, it just moves on to the particular operation. So this is how your keyword works. So note that your keywords cannot be used as a name of an identifier. So we just have already seen it, right? So identifier name cannot be a keyword. So keyword has a special meaning and it has to be performing the same operation which the program developer has meant it for, right? Okay, so moving on to the next thing is your data types. So data type is one of the most important attribute of an identifier, right? So data type is nothing but it is used to define the type of your identifier. So whenever I'm just saying an identifier, it might be an name of a variable, constant, a function, you just know it, right? So whenever I'm just accompanying it with a variable or a constant, what it does is that it just indicates that the data which is being stored inside the particular variable or the data which is being stored inside the particular constant is going to be a certain kind of a data, right? So similarly, if I'm just accompanying it with a function, means what it does is that it just mentions that you are going to return a particular value, and then particular return value is going to be this kind of data, right? So what is it used for? So data type is used for mentioning the kind of data which you are just going to use inside the following thing. So following identifier, whatever the identifier it might be, that particular identifier, if you are just following it up, you will be mentioning it out, right? So there are three major types of your data type. So the first thing is your basic data type. We just also categorize it as a primitive data type. So the next one is your derived data type. The next one is your user defined data type. So first we just shall look at the basic data types. So basic or the primitive data types. So most of all the other data types will be formed around or casted around these basic and the primitive data types. So we are having around 5 data types under it. So the first thing is your char, C-H-A-R. So char is used to represent a character inside your C program, right? So whenever I just want to use a character, I just shall use char data type. So whenever I'm just saying char, it might be an alphabet, it might be an digit, it might be a special character, it might be even a white space I could store inside it, right? So character could hold all these values inside it. So what is the thing which just differentiates it from the other thing type is that the values which you are just storing inside it will be in the form of character, and you will be representing the particular character with the help of a quotation mark, right? So whenever you are representing a data with the help of a quotation mark, we just all call it as a character 2, right? So the next thing which I have written is int, so which stands for integer data type. So integer data types are nothing but a data type with no decimal points. So the whole numbers which we are just using, right, we just call it as an integer data type, right? So the next one is your float. So float is nothing but the numbers which we are just using to represent with the help of a precision point or a decimal point, right? So for example, I'm just saying 10.56, so we just represent it with the help of a floating point value. So float is nothing but the values which we are going to have with the help of a decimal point. We will be representing it with the help of a float value. So similarly, the next thing is your double. So double is nothing but it is a little bit lengther compared to your floating point value. So if you are going to represent lesser than 4 decimal points, you could use your float value. If you are going to represent more than that, what you could do, you just shall go to your double value, right? So the next thing is your void. So void is nothing but it is used to represent the null data, so which means there is doesn't hold any values to it. Whenever I'm just writing a function with void, means what it does is that it does not return any value, or it just returns a null value. So the values which doesn't have anything, or the null value, will be represented with the help of your void, right? So moving on to the next data type is your derived data type. So derived data types, here we are just having around 3 derived data types. So array, pointer and functions. So what we are looking at inside your derived data type is we are just going to alter the certain properties of your primitive data types so that you could achieve your derived data type. So this is what your derived data type comes under, right? So the first thing which we are just going to look under your derived data type is your arrays. So arrays are nothing but the values which we are storing inside your array. We are variable. For example, I'm just saying that you could, if you are using an integer variable, and you could store only one value inside it. So if I want to store a multiple value, what I have to do is I just have to extend the property of it. So I'm just extending the property of, for example, a character by using your array, right? So such a way that it could store multiple values inside it. So this is what your array does. So we are going to store multiple values inside your array with the help of your the primitive data type. It might be a character, it might be an integer, so likewise, right? So the next thing is your pointers. So pointers are nothing but it is our referential variables. So here we are just going to store the address of other variables inside it. So it is a referential variable. Since we are just going to store the address of it, we just call it as a referential variable. So similarly, the functions. So functions are nothing but it is used to group up a certain set of statements, and then with the help of the function call, you could reuse the set of code again and again and again and again, right? So this is the major advantage of using your derived data types. So again, further we are just going to look at it in detail about array, pointers and functions in the upcoming classes. So I'm just giving an outline of it right now, and then we just shall look at it in a detailed manner in the appropriate classes, right? So the next data type is your user-defined data type. So user-defined data type, here we are just having structure, union, and enumeration. So here also what we do is that we just certainly alter the properties of your primitive data types over here. So what are all the properties which you are altering is here your derived data type will be something like a homogeneous kind of data. So what if I want to store multiple values or multiple things under the same name? So for example, just shall consider a date as a particular variable. You could store multiple values such as day inside it, month inside it, and the year inside it, right? So here I'm just combining a unified data and then making it as an single data type. So we just call these kind of data as a user defined data types. Again, we will be looking at it in a detailed manner, so we just shall look at it in the upcoming classes, right? Okay, so moving on to the variables. So variables is nothing but so whatever the value which you are just storing, you just store it inside the memory, right? So the memory, how we are just identifying it, we are just identifying it with the help of a memory address. So what is the major drawback while writing a program is you cannot identify or you cannot remember the memory address and you could do it. So for that particular purpose, what we do is we just place it inside and name, we just call it as a variable name, right? So variables are nothing but it is a container for a memory address to store the certain values inside it. So for example, I'm just saying that if I'm just going to use an data type called as integer, so it just allocates a certain kind of memory and the size depending upon the type of it, right? So instead of referring it with the help of the memory address, we are just using the variable name for referring it, and then we are using it inside the program, right? So what is a variable? So variable is nothing but it is an entity whose values which are stored inside it could be changed throughout the execution of a program. So again, we just shall look at it in a programmatic manner. Whenever we are looking at it in a program manner, it will be much easier for you to understand. So right now you just keep in mind that so variables are nothing but it is a container where you are going to store the values inside it, right? So this is nothing but for instead of calling up in a memory location, we are just using your variable names for calling it. So how you will be assigning a value inside your variable is you will be using your assignment operator for assigning the value inside your variable names. Again, we will be looking at it in further in the programmatical manner. It will be easier for you to understand, right? So next thing is your constants. So constants are nothing but which is similar to your variable. We are just going to store a certain element inside your memory, and then for that particular memory block we just use a particular name, right? So what is the difference between a variable and a constant? So variable, you could change or you could alter the values inside it throughout the execution of the program. If you cannot alter the particular value, if it is being same throughout the execution of the program, we just categorize it under constants. So the values which we are just defining it as a constant, you cannot alter the values inside it throughout the execution of the program. So we are having around 3 different types of constants. So the first one is your literal constant, qualified constant, symbolic constant, right? So literal constants are nothing but the general constants which just comes up with the data types. So it might be an integer constant, floating point constant, character constant, or even it might be the null value, right? So next thing is your qualified constants. So the qualified constants are nothing but the constant values which we are using to define it with the help of a keyword called as const. So whatever the variable which we are just using a const keyword before it, we just say it as a qualified constant, so that the values will not be cannot be changed. So all the constants, the values cannot be changed. Here we are just using the container for with the help of a const statement so that it cannot be altered, right? So next thing is your symbolic constants. So the symbolic constants are nothing but these are the set of constants which we just use to define with the help of a keyword called as define, right? So define excuse me. So we are just using a keyword called as a define. So whenever I just declare a variable with the help of a define keyword, what I do is I just mention it as a symbolic constant, right? So these are the basic things or these are the basic building blocks which is must required for you to know about before getting into a programming language. So what we shall do is we just shall look at the basic structure of a C program, and then what are all the operators and other most important components which are required for you to write a C program in the upcoming class. And once after knowing about the basic building blocks, we just shall start programming, and then we just shall go on with the live classes. Okay, I think that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching the video today. Stay tuned and cheers. Bye.